and welcome to the Plant School podcast. I'm Rachel Tenney, and here we learn all about plants, how they work, how to care for them, and it's all taught in a way that anyone from beginner to expert can listen to, understand, and enjoy. So I hope that you will join me in Plant School. Hello and welcome to the Plant School podcast. Before I begin this episode, I do want to apologize because I realize that I missed an episode. And this doesn't happen very often for me. I was actually traveling out of the country. And you know what? I'm just going to tell you guys, we're gonna start the podcast episode out with a bang, I guess. I am expecting, and first trimester has been a real doozy for me. I'm coming out of it, but I have been so behind in things. So that is another reason. So hopefully you guys can extend me some grace in missing that episode 2 weeks ago. I'm hoping to kind of do a double episode where I'll put one out next Thursday and then the one after that, kind of playing catch up to where I normally should be at. But again, I do apologize. And that was kind of fun sharing that secret with you guys. I still haven't told many people about that. I just haven't gotten around to making like an announcement on personal pages and stuff. So before we get into the content of today's episode, very quickly, I want to do our giveaway winners, and I'm so excited to tell you that we have a sponsor again. So in previous episodes, you guys heard that my usual sponsor took a little break because it is their busy season, and that's totally fine. And I had a friend step in. You guys may be familiar with who this is because he actually came on the podcast and talked. It's Cameron Curry, who is the creator of Prop Drops, and he shared his story about creating that whole product. Such a great episode. I highly recommend going and listening to it. It was episode 138, Turning a Houseplant Hobby into a Business. But he emailed me and kindly offered to step in. So our giveaway winners will be winning a care package from his company, Market Botany. It comes with Prop Drops, which, by the way, I love. I've been using it for my propagations, and I feel like they're doing so much better. My snake plant actually rooted. And then it comes with Leaf Shine, and then also a microfiber cloth to use that Leaf Shine with. So that's the care package that you'll be receiving if you enter the giveaway. So for our winners today, last episode I asked you guys if you have ever eaten taro root or would consider eating it. Taro root is from the alocasia plant, not usually the houseplant in our homes, but it's a different variety that is grown out in the wild. So picking a random winner from there, today it is Caitlin, and she responded, "No way, Jose, ooh, it's so gross." I'm not sure if she's saying that from experience or she's just not interested in eating the root of this plant. Either way, Caitlin, you are the winner for this week's giveaway over on Spotify. And while we're on the Spotify, I was actually surprised by a lot of these answers. Many of you have already tried it. People say that they've had it in their boba teas. They've had taro milk tea or taro root just from the market. Some of you said that you would definitely be willing to try it, and others, kind of like Caitlin, said that they weren't too sure about it. But I also pick a winner from Apple Podcasts. So from Spotify, I pick a winner from someone who has answered the most recent episode's question. There's just a little question beneath every episode, and if you answer it, you're just automatically entered in. It's easy as that. And then over on Apple Podcasts, I choose someone who has left a review. So our winner over on Apple Podcasts is Tittlebits. They said, "I find myself constantly adjusting my plants after listening to these episodes, just small adjustments after listening to a care guide or changing their pots or soil when I hear a new bit of info. Love this, have and would recommend." Thank you so much, Tittlebits, for leaving that review. If that was you, and Caitlin, if that was you, go ahead and email me at tenneyplants@gmail.com, TENNEY plants@gmail.com, and we will get a care package sent your way. And for anyone else that's interested, Cameron, the owner of Market Botany, actually gave me a discount code for all of you to use. So if you want to go check out his website, if you've been thinking about trying out Prop Drops or his Leaf Shine or getting the entire care package, I would highly recommend it. You can go to his website. It's just marketbotany.com, and you can use the Plant School podcast code for 10% off your entire order. And the code is literally Plant School Podcast. No spaces, no capitalization, just Plant School Podcast. Put that in there and you can get 10% off your order. And thank you to Cameron for stepping in. I really do appreciate that. And I really appreciate you guys listening, leaving reviews, answering the questions. I will keep doing these giveaways every single episode. All right, let's dive into today's episode. This was actually a recommendation from Rebecca Oliver. Thank you so much for this recommendation. I get quite a few recommendations and I love them. And I apologize to anyone who has sent one in and I have yet to get to it. My list is getting quite long and I'm doing the best I can. But if you have an idea for an episode, do not hesitate to send it on over. You can always email me. You can find me on Instagram, the Plant School Podcast, and I am always open to your ideas. So thank you, Rebecca, for today's episode's idea. We're going to talk about the top 10 Pothos varieties. And honestly, I think the Pothos plant is one of the most underrated houseplants. I think it's everywhere and it's very common. So I don't think it's really sought after, but I love this plant. And actually, as I'm talking, I just realized I meant to look up if it's Pothos or Pothos. Let's see, I'm gonna double check with Google.
Pothos.
You guys, it's Pothos. At least that's what the American pronunciation says. I'm pretty sure I've been saying it wrong my entire life. Let me try and correct myself and say Pothos for the rest of this episode. We'll see how well it goes. I might say Pothos because it's such a habit by now. And honestly, I don't think it matters that much. But just so you know, that's what Google recommend is Pothos. So as I was saying, I think this plant is super underrated. They're like the golden retrievers of the houseplant world. Just so easygoing, so forgiving, just the best companion. There's more varieties than you may think. So today we're going to go over some of those varieties that I personally think stand out and would be a great addition to any home. Some of these may sound familiar, some of them may be new. Regardless, we're going to dive into it with number 1. This is in no particular order, Pearls and Jade Pothos. Its scientific name is Epiprimnum aureum Pearls and Jade. That's its variety. And you will notice as we go through, there's basically 2 types of Pothos plants. There's Epiprimnum aureum, and then there's Epiprimnum pinnatum. Those are the main 2, and they differ in leaf shape. They don't really differ in how you care for them, but as you get familiar with them, you will start to notice those differences between the species aureum and pinnatum. But the Pearls and Jade Pothos is an aureum variety. It's got these really large white areas of variegation. If it's placed in a well-lit area, that's going to be a common theme throughout this episode. If you pick a Pothos plant with variegation and you want it to stay variegated, you need to give it a well-lit area or it's going to revert back to having no variegation. And I thought it'd be fun to include the price of each of these plants just so you can kind of get an idea of where they fall. The Pearls and Jade Pothos is pretty average. So it ranges from like $3 for a simple cutting to $30 for a more decent sized plant. Next we have the Mandula Pothos. This is one that I had never heard of. Its scientific name is Epiprimnum aureum Mandula. And this one has lots of variegation as well with those broader leaves because it is an aureum species. The Mandula Pothos is actually considered one of the more rare varieties. It's got a creamy yellow to a white variegation, and it was actually developed at the University of Florida, and it is currently patented. And usually when a plant is under a patent, it's basically protecting this variety from being copied, from being sold, or used by others. So this one I found when I was looking for its price, it was a little bit harder to find the price because it is under that patent by the University of Florida. So it's definitely more on the rare side. Price ranges from about $4 for a cutting up to $50 for a small one. And like I said, definitely this puts it on the more expensive side. Next, we have the Cebu Blue Pothos. This one I feel like has kind of blown up and become pretty common within houseplant collectors' worlds. Its scientific name is Epiprimnum pinnatum, so this is our first pinnatum species. So Epiprimnum pinnatum Cebu Blue. So it has these narrow leaves, and actually these leaves, when they're young, they have no fenestrations, but as they reach bigger sizes, and they start to mature and get large, they will have fenestrations. Honestly, once they fenestrate, they look nothing like your normal pothos plant, which is kind of fun. And they have this kind of dusky bluish color, hence its name, and the leaves are a darker green from, the more common pothos varieties. It is very similar to the Baltic blue. I think the Baltic blue is a bit more dark in its leaf color, and prices range from about $4 for a cutting up to $40 for a small plant. So I would say average pricing, maybe a little more expensive than others, but it's pretty average. Next variety that stood out to me was the Enjoy Pothos. The Enjoy Pothos. Oh my gosh, I'm just realizing I was so confused. So the way it's spelt is in apostrophe J-O-W, like enjoy. And as I'm saying out loud, I finally get it. It's like enjoy. But as I was typing it, I was like, who created this name? It's not making any sense. But I get it now. Wow. I blame pregnancy brain. I really don't know why that didn't click for me. But its scientific name is Epiprimnum aureum Enjoy. So I actually really love this one. This was maybe... Oh, is it my favorite? I don't know. I had so many that I love. This is one of my favorites. So it has really stunning variegation. I don't know why I love this type of variegation, but it was white with light green and dark green, and they're kind of more splotchy. They have like a painted look. It reminds me a little bit of like Stromanth Trio Star. If you guys are familiar with that pink plant, its variegation type reminded me of that. So this plant is quite similar to Pearls and Jade, and it is also really similar to the Glacier Pothos. And the Glacier Pothos is slightly more silvery, has smaller, rounder leaves, and the Glacier is actually considered the more rare version of these three similar varieties. So if you are into something that is rare and looks just as beautiful as the Enjoy Pothos, then the Glacier might be for you. Prices range for the Enjoy Pothos from $5 for a cutting to about $35 for an average size pot. As I was looking around, I feel like it was a tad more expensive than usual, but not by much. All right, next we have the Marble Queen. Scientific name is Epiprimnum aureum Marble Queen. This one I feel like is also very common, and you can find them at most houseplant shops. And if you are unfamiliar with the way that this plant looks, just imagine like a really, really nicely marbled piece of steak. And that's the look of the Marble Queen, except it's green and white, not red and white. But it is a very stunning variety. Prices range for about $3 for a cutting, up to $40 for a nicely sized one. I would say that these are very average prices for a pothos. Next is the Golden Pothos, Epiprimnum aureum. No variety name to this. This is just the standard. And I know this is top 10 varieties, but I can't pass up the Golden Pothos because it is probably the most common of all pothos plants, but it's classic. It holds up. It has golden/light green variegation, and you can find it basically at any houseplant shop or big box store, since this is kind of the standard pothos plant, and its price range is very reasonable. $2 for a cutting, $20 for a decent sized plant. It does very well in our homes, hence why it is held up for so long. All right, next we have the Neon Pothos, Epiprimnum aureum Neon. Again, this one is quite common, but it has a very light, almost like neon, hence its name, neon lime green leaves. And it really stands out in a houseplant collection because I don't know of very many houseplants that have that neon green color. So when you set it in on a shelf with your other houseplants, it really pops. That is why I included this one. And actually, there is a variegated variety that is also just stunning. I think it's even more stunning than the neon pothos, just in my opinion. I love variegation, right? Gives a uniqueness to a plant. And like I said earlier, if you keep the variegated variety in good light, it will keep that variegation and it won't revert back to just being that neon green. Prices range for just the neon pothos for about $3 for a cutting to $25 for a decent sized plant, making this very average price. Next is another one I had never heard of, but I fell in love with it. It is the Snow Queen Pothos, not to be confused with the Marble Queen, but its scientific name is Epiprimnum aureum Snow Queen. It is highly variegated, and as you may have guessed from its name, it is mostly white. So it's kind of like the Marble Queen, but with more variegation, more white. And again, with good lighting, it should keep that variegation. Prices were a little more expensive, from $5 for a cutting up to $40 for a more decent sized plant. I think because this one is a little bit more new and cutting edge, it demands a little bit of a higher price. All right, next pothos plant. I'm doing so good about pronouncing pothos this way. I'm very proud of myself. Perhaps it will become a new habit for me. Is the Harlequin pothos, or Epiprimnum aureum harlequin. This plant is highly variegated. It's got that white and dark green. It's quite similar looking to the Mandula pothos, but this one is even more rare. Some consider it to be one of the rarest pothos varieties. And you can see that in the higher price it demands. I found that it was about $8 for a cutting up to $60 for a small plant. So definitely on the more expensive side. And as far as looks goes, this is just me speaking. I don't see too much of a difference between Harlequin and the Mandula. So much so that I would honestly probably just buy a Mandula if I really liked that look, but it's up to you. Another rare variety that I just wanted to mention, but I don't know if this one actually makes the list of my top 10 because I don't know, I just didn't think it was that pretty. Sorry if you love it, but I just didn't love it. It's the skeleton key pothos plant. Scientific name is Epiprimnum skeleton key. So the leaves are very uniquely shaped, right? Which is why it gets its name. It forms like a normal leaf, but then it comes to a very thin strand at the end of its leaf, making a skeleton key-like shape. I think it looks a little silly, and that's why it's not on my list. But you know what? That's my opinion. And does my opinion really matter? No, it doesn't. So if you love rare varieties, definitely put skeleton key on your list. And for my last one, this one, I don't know, this is kind of a cheat. Maybe it's like an honorable mention, is a silver satin pothos. It's a stunning plant, but it's not in the Epiprimnum genus. It's not truly a pothos plant. Its scientific name is Scindapsus pictus exotica. That's the name for silver satin pothos. So we call it a pothos plant, but it is technically not one. Its appearance and care are so similar, though. That is why I am throwing it in here, because it is beautiful and I think it deserves a spot in here. So its leaves are dark green and it has these lighter, almost silvery splashes between its veins. They are quite common. You can find them at most stores. Another similar variety is satin pothos, so get rid of the silver, satin pothos, but both are, in my opinion, just equally as stunning. And prices range from about $3 for a cutting to about $30 for a small pot. So pretty average pricing here as well. I hope you guys forgive me for throwing in a Scindapsus, but I couldn't help myself. Anyways, with that is my top 10. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Maybe put a few new ones on your list to look at. I think if I were going to the store to pick some up, I would probably look for Snow Queen, Neon, or, I do love Cebu Blue, but I also really love the Enjoy pothos plant. So those are probably the ones I would look at. I basically just named my whole list, didn't I? But anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening. Like I said, I'm going to try and put out a bonus episode next Thursday. Usually, I do these episodes every other Thursday. But because I fell behind, I'm going to try and get one extra in there. So I will hopefully have you back next week for a brand new episode of the Plant School Podcast. Thank you so much for being here and for listening to the Plant School Podcast. I hope that you will join me for our next episode. And if you would like to support this podcast and keep it going, there's a link down in the show notes of this episode where you can donate to this podcast. And I really appreciate all that help. Or you can go to my merch store, which is also linked in the notes of this episode. And you can find some really cool plant-related shirts and stickers. And if you want to support the podcast but spend no money, feel free to share it with a friend, leave a review. All these things greatly help me out and allow me to keep doing this. Again, thank you so much for listening and for being here at the Plant School Podcast.